you're asking the voters of St. Pete to hire you. Do you want to tell me your greatest strength and greatest weakness?
So absolutely, greatest strength would be my ability to lead. I've always said throughout this entire campaign that the job of mayor is exactly analogous to a private company in that the mayor is the CEO, the city council is the board of directors, and all the citizens are the shareholders. And we need to have more scrutiny on upper management when it comes to our elected officials. And that's why I'm asking for people's vote, because I would like to be hired as the mayor. That being said, though, I view the job of mayor as a public service, not a career. And I'd say my biggest strength is the innovative ideas I bring to the table all the time. You know, I've had success in the private sector, running a company, providing affordable housing and commercial options throughout the city. But also I've had success in the halls of City Hall. You know, I've worked the last 2 years to make real change towards affordable housing, towards fiscal stewardship, environmentalism, preservation, and also smart growth and job creation. So my biggest strength would be my innovative ideas. Biggest weakness would be maybe that I try to get involved in everything at once. And it's because I care, you know, but I want to bring outsider views to the mainstream, and I want everyone else to have a role within city government, because I truly do believe it's a service and it's any representative's job to get in, get the job done, and then get back out.
It's your first week on the job. In that first week, what's the primary initiative that you want to get rolling?
Well, there's going to be a bunch of different groundwork we have to get done. First of all, I got to get all my stuff moved in. So my art collection, which I have currently on the other side of City Hall in my council office, I'd like to move that over. It has all sorts of local art, and I call it the City Hall Museum, because I have art from every different artist for the last 50 years in St. Pete. So that's primary. But other than that, I want to get going on different initiatives, like my plan for city-backed mortgages, which will save taxpayers money and also help those who are working at the 40% area median income and lower earning class get true home ownership. Because we talk about equity all the time, but the only true equity comes with financial equity. And to that point, one initiative I can get off the ground almost immediately is my plan to redo the Sunshine Center. The Sunshine Center is a senior center that's right off of Mirror Lake downtown, and it's horribly deficient and it's outdated. That doesn't mean that the works that are done there aren't good works, but it needs renovation. So what I'd like to see done is I'd like to see the Sunshine Center torn down by a developer, rebuilt as a state-of-the-art senior center with a vertical tower component above it, with affordable housing for seniors and market rate apartments. And what that will do is get us a new state-of-the-art senior facility. It'll get us senior affordable housing by utilizing our density, but it'll also get us market rate housing that will then pay us in perpetuity by giving back to our tax base, all without costing the taxpayers a dime because of the value of the land. So that's one of the initiatives I'd like to get going day one.
Big thing, big topic here in St. Pete is housing, and housing prices are continuing to skyrocket in St. Pete. The average price for a one-bedroom is about $2,000 right now, which is pretty high compared to Clearwater and Tampa. So my question for you is, what are you going to do to make sure we have affordable housing in this city?
Well, you know, what I touched on earlier is city-backed mortgages, and let me explain that a little bit. Currently, we give subsidies to developers. You know, some of them have gotten up in $70,000+ per unit. And what that approach does is it allows developers to build new construction, but cost of construction is so high these days with the cost of land, the cost of labor, and the cost of materials. And we can't change that from a city perspective. So what we're doing is we're subsidizing developers. That's a means through which to get affordable housing, but it's not necessarily always the smartest means. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to take that same level of subsidy, which could be $75,000 or so, and put it towards purchasing already existing condominium units in our city. You can still buy condos for between $50,000 and $125,000 in St. Pete. And what we would do is if we buy those and then assign the mortgages over, every dollar that enters the affordable housing program will never leave the affordable housing program. And what that can do is that can allow people to get in homes quicker because we don't have to wait for the construction to be done. But it also helps taxpayers citywide because every dollar that enters will never go away. And it'll be a snowball effect and the program can get bigger and bigger. But mainly what it does is allows us to do it more cost effectively, which allows a completely different class of individuals, earning class, to get equity in home ownership. You know, right now the home ownership that we target with affordable housing a lot of times is 120% of the area median income. That's $60,000, $70,000 salaries per year. Those are well-paid people. But if we can target these housing units that are older, what we can do is we can help out people who are in the $30,000 earning salary class. And those are the people who really need help the most. You can have an out-the-door payment for less than $750 a month, and that includes water, sewer, trash, cable, electric, and your mortgage payment due to the cost of the unit being so low. So I really need to utilize the value of these older condos based on the high exorbitant cost of new construction to get those who need housing in housing the quickest.
When it comes to St. Pete, you're in a beautiful location. We're here on the water. What do you think is the biggest environmental threat to St. Pete, and what are you going to do about it?
You know, there's a number of different environmental threats. Let me just take a step back and give you one example of environmentalism gone right. My favorite animal is the sawfish. The sawfish is a unique animal, but it's very rare, and it's rare for a couple of reasons. Number one, they don't reach sexual maturity until age 7. Number two, they only have one offspring at a time. And as a former member of the Tampa Bay Estuary Program Board of Directors, I understand the importance of these revitalization and renourishment efforts towards our environment. The sawfish has made a recovery into Tampa Bay. It used to be found throughout the country. It's now isolated to a few pockets off of Florida and a couple other countries. But what we've done is we've created a good quality bay that is sustainable for life, and that's how we've brought animals like the sawfish back. To that end, I've worked towards environmentalism through the estuary program, but also I've worked with Tampa Bay Watch, I've worked with Water Warrior Marine Alliance, and what we've done is we've tried to do trash pickups, recycling efforts, awareness projects, but also I've worked on oyster plantings and also mangrove plantings. And why this is important is red tide is obviously at the forefront of everyone's mind. You know, last year and this year, we had the worst red tide bloom in a generation. And what we can do to prevent that is there's low-hanging fruit that we haven't even touched, such as oyster planting projects. Now, what an oyster planting project could do is a healthy oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of water a day, filter out all the toxins and all the different biohazards, and then spit out clean water in return. If we started planting more oyster domes and vertical oyster gardens underneath people's docks, you string together, you know, a couple of these clusters of a few hundred here, a few hundred there, we can filter hundreds of thousands of gallons of water a day to keep our bay clean and environmentally sustainable for our environment, for our economy due to our fishing and our tourism, and just due to quality of life, because nobody wants to smell and see the horrible detraction that it became of red tide and all the disastrous ecological effects we had. So I would say red tide and keeping our bay and our natural assets clean for our residents and for those who come to visit us every year.
Should the Rays stay in St. Pete? If so, what are you going to do to keep them here? And if not, how do you hope to make the city succeed without the Rays?
So we get asked that question all the time about the Rays. My personal opinion, of course, I'd love to see baseball remain in St. Pete. We're a major league city, we deserve a major league team. And I think it can be the showpiece of a new development on the Tropicana Field site, the current stadium site. You know, it makes sense in a lot of ways. We could take Allang, which is where the Tampa Bay Rowdies play, the soccer team that the Rays organization now owns, and combine them into a mixed-use stadium with the Rays on the Tropicana Field site. I agree with ownership that they need to be further east. They're currently on the west end of that site. And if we can get a new stadium agreement together, what we can do is we can use that as an exciting catalyst for redevelopment around it. You know, what's holding back our economic growth in St. Petersburg is not enough room for office space for Fortune 500 companies to relocate, but also we don't have enough hotel rooms. Constantly over the last 10 years, we've been 90+% booked out an occupancy rate on hotels. So what we could do is we could use a new stadium site to put office towers around it. There has not been a new office tower built in downtown St. Pete since 1986. That was before I was born. So we absolutely need to do that. I know some people say, well, COVID, you know, do you really need office space? But a Fortune 500 company may have less need for office space than they used to, but they're not going to eliminate that footprint completely. And we need to be cognizant of that as we're seeing major new companies move here, like ARC Investments, like we're seeing the Project Athena unnamed site, which the media has largely already identified. But we need to make sure that we're competing for every relocation when it comes to corporations, because we need St. Pete citizens to get good paying jobs at good quality companies so that they can afford housing, they can afford to take care of their families. That being said, hotel space, very important in downtown. The national market and funding sources for hotel fell off during COVID, but we have so few hotels with so few vacancy rates downtown that we need to focus on that. If we lose the Rays, the trajectory doesn't change much because our downtown is our downtown, and at the end of the day, we have been doing a great job there. You know, there's plenty of room for growth. We've seen a constriction in available land, but also we've seen densities and the rise and advent of these, 40-plus story towers in downtown St. Pete, which seemed unheard of when I was a kid, but now is becoming the new norm. Just yesterday, there was a groundbreaking at 400 Central. So what we need to do is we need to facilitate smart growth, but also be cognizant of our past. And to that end, I want to make sure that there are parts of the Tropicana Field site that pay homage to those who lived there before, the traditional communities and neighborhoods, the gas plant district. You have Peppertown. Everybody who lived there before, be cognizant of that. I'm a big preservation guy. I've won the top award from St. Pete Preservation. I also fought to save the historic 1925 bait shop from the original $1 Million Pier until the mayor had it torn down when I had it up for discussion. So I want smart growth, and Tropicana Field is just the site for that. But it's not growth at all costs, because we need to maintain what keeps St. Pete special to make us the best city we can be.
The Rays donated $50,000 to Ken Welch's PAC. So do you think that changes anything with how your goals are aligned with the goals of the Rays or in downtown St. Pete?
Well, it was shocking to me when Ken Welch got that $50,000 donation. First of all, the Rays had told me and the other candidates all throughout the mayor's race they would not be supporting a candidate. Then when Ken starts saying that baseball's interests are secondary to the interest of the citizenry, and then at the same time he's endorsed by Mayor Castor in Tampa, when Tampa comes out with a new stadium plan, yeah, I certainly think, pardon my pun, but I certainly think there's some insider baseball involved here. I think a Mayor Welch would let the Rays out of their contract to go to Tampa. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change my plans or my stances on baseball, because I will be a hardline negotiator for the people over the interest of baseball. That doesn't mean that I'm going to let them go. It means there is a value to be had with a major league team here, and I'm going to fight tooth and nail to preserve it. I can see beyond a slap in the face like that, because we need to put aside petty politics in our country and certainly in our town. I'm not going to treat Ray's organization and leadership any different because they supported my opponent, because at the end of the day, it's my job as mayor to be a mature adult and to make the best deal for our citizens. And I intend to do exactly that.
I'm asking both you and your opponent about separate Tampa Bay Times articles, and they're both accusing each of you of making offensive statements several years ago. An August article accused you of making disparaging remarks about women, Asian people, and tenants about roughly a decade ago. Did you say those things, and what do you want people to know about you today?
So I've addressed those comments, but to be clear, I will address them again because it's a fair point. In my past, in my youth, my very young youth, I've made jokes. I've made inappropriate comments. That doesn't make it right then. It's not right now. But that is not, to be very clear, how I've ever comported myself as an elected official. The dates on those, which I could not ever even find on my Facebook, they've been deleted for years if they were there, were between the ages of 17 and 22 years of age. My opponent, on the other hand, has actively fought against groups as an elected official and as a candidate for elected office. The earliest comments of his, he was 33 years of age. That's older than I am today. And there as recently as when he was a 45 and 47-year-old man fighting against the LGBTQ community, fighting against gay rights. He was the sole vote against a gay marketing program at the county level, which we so desperately need for economic growth. And he said he didn't understand the trans community, the transgender community. And he said he didn't know where they'd go to the bathroom or how they would disrupt an office. He also said that the black community and blacks were nothing but pawns of the Democratic Party and that black people oftentimes stood under a shade tree drinking malt liquor. That is extremely offensive, and my opponent has never apologized for his comments. To be very clear, anything I have said in my youth, I fully own up to. I am sorry and I apologize. But this is not how I have ever comported myself as an elected official, and I think we need to take into account who has done what, when, and at what juncture in their life. If there can be growth for one, there must be growth allowed for both, especially somebody who had youthful indiscretions, and they were not youthful indiscretions on the part of my opponent.
Diversity has been a pretty major topic of discussion, here in St. Pete, around the country. So how would you ensure your administration's hiring and policy decisions reflected the St. Pete community?
Well, diversity is absolutely our strength in St. Petersburg. And if you look at my supporters, they look exactly like our community. Some of my biggest supporters are people who don't look like me, but not all of the community looks like me. I'm proud to have supporters who are African American. I'm proud to have supporters who are activists in the LGBTQIA+ community. I'm proud to have transgendered supporters. I'm proud to have supporters old and young, because my campaign platform has been a St. Pete for all. I don't just say that, I live it and I mean it. And that's what we need to have moving forward. One of my biggest initiatives and plans will be to bring in, we have an LGBT liaison right now at the city who is underpaid and does a great job. What I would like to do is I would like to have LGBTQ liaisons be a part of every department, specifically in terms of our economic development and growth. Because what better way to grow our city in an inclusive manner than bringing people who are like-minded to our city? We need to be aggressively and proactively targeting businesses throughout our country for people who share our beliefs and values. We've been lucky that companies like ARC have come here and the Dynasty Financial, but we didn't work hard enough to bring these groups here. We can be fighting to bring groups here and companies all the time, and we can have and share many major successes, because we need to have that economic growth that St. Pete has been so desperately lacking for my entire lifetime. A company used to go out of business in St. Pete and you never see a new one come into that vacant storefront. We need to make sure we diversify our economy, because absolutely just entertainment and tourism based, which is what we are right now in service, can go downhill quickly during a recession. So we need to make sure we have smart growth. And to that end, we have plenty of diverse groups and companies nationwide who we'd love to share with in St. Petersburg. And we also need to make sure that every voice has a seat at the table. That's exactly what I intend to do when elected mayor.
Pew research has showed that voters really don't trust the government at this point. So my question is, why do you think voters should trust you?
Well, that's an interesting question that we honestly don't get asked a lot, so I appreciate you asking that. But, I'm a guy who is from St. Pete. I'm not a career politician. I've been in office less than 2 years. My opponent announced he was running for mayor in March of 2018. To put that in perspective, I wasn't even elected to the city council until November of 2019, a year and a half after my opponent announced his intentions to seek this office. He also had previously said he would run in 2017, 2013, and 2009, and my opponent was elected the same day as George W. Bush in the year 2000. That same Tuesday, I was in the 5th grade, and I attended my 5th grade classes. So certainly I think you can consider me to be a political outsider about as much as they come, and I've tried to bring that outside thinking to City Hall. I've constantly put forward ideas and initiatives as recently as last week at council, where we were taking a $90+ million boondoggle, which is the biosolids to energy plan in Southwest St. Pete at our treatment facility, that I was not on board and not on council when the vote was taken, that is completely gone to pot. We right now have a flame going in Southwest St. Petersburg that's cost us $93 million to do. I said, why could we not use that energy that we're burning off right now to mine Bitcoin or cryptocurrency? That was a possibility they hadn't looked into, and they're looking into it right now. I'm still bringing ideas to the table as an outsider. I was a guy who was frustrated with the decisions I saw being made at the city level all the time by those I thought didn't have the experience, the knowledge, or the historical background with St. Petersburg to truly lead. I'm 4th generation on my mother's side, 3rd generation on my father's side in St. Petersburg. St. Pete has been my whole life, my whole existence, my entire fabric. Why did I say my office at City Hall was the History Museum? Because I celebrate St. Pete's past, but I want to bring it to a more prosperous future. And that's why you should trust me, because I am just a common guy who's not looking for a career. I'm looking to do a service, and a service for the individuals. I want to get in, make a change, and get back out and back to regular life. I don't need the job, but I want to serve.
There are obviously going to be people that vote for you and that don't vote for you. So how are you going to build bridges with the people that didn't vote for you?
You know, I said in my speech when I was elected to council, I believe I won by 28%. There was over 30% of the people who didn't vote for me, and I said that day began the task of bridging the gap with those who did not vote for me. We need to always look to provide for and help out every member of our electorate. You know, St. Pete for all, again, my slogan, but I mean it. I always take meetings with anybody, no matter who your background, who you are, what your background is, or what your persuasion is, because if you just surround yourself with like-minded people all the time, there's no true innovation, there's no true diversity. I always want to gain perspective from those who have a different lived experience than myself. That is how you get true, meaningful change. So I hope that over 50% of the people vote for me, because that's how I'll win. But then begins the hard job of making sure that those others who did not feel their voices heard. Like I said about the raise, it doesn't matter who you voted for or who you supported. Everything resets come January when we have that new mayor sworn in. And I want to make sure that I am a mayor for everybody, because we are a vast melting pot of a city. We're a great example of diversity, and I'm going to continue that trend moving forward.